The night was cold on the alien world, a kind of silence that pressed heavy against the ears as if the land itself held its breath. The stars hung low, burning faintly behind drifting clouds of dust. In a small broken village on the edge of a barren field, a cruel thing had been done. A little alien girl, no older than 8 years, had been forced into the dirt by rough hands. Her stepmother's face had been sharp and merciless, her voice harsh like stone. The woman had pushed the child down, piled soil over her, and whispered, "No one will hear you now. No one will care." Then she had left, her footsteps fading into the night. The child lay trapped, her tiny chest rising weakly under the weight of earth. The soil pressed against her ribs, cold and heavy, stealing her breath with each passing second. Fear burned in her wide eyes, tears mixing with the dirt on her face. She wanted to scream, to call for help, but her throat gave only a weak sound, a broken whimper that was swallowed by the wind. Minutes passed. Her voice cracked again, soft but desperate, like a wounded bird lost in the dark. Far away, across the field, a human traveler walked slowly on the lonely path. His name was Daniel. He carried nothing more than a worn pack on his shoulders and a lantern faintly glowing in his hand. He had been wandering through villages, trading small tools for food, searching for a purpose on this strange alien world. That night, he should have walked past. He should have kept his eyes on the road and his thoughts on himself. But something stopped him. It was faint, almost impossible to notice, but Daniel's ears caught it, a sound carried by the wind. At first he thought it was the cry of some night creature, but then he froze. No animal made a sound like that. It was broken, weak, trembling. It was the sound of a child. Daniel lifted his lantern higher, his brow tight with unease. He stepped off the path, boots crunching against the dry ground. The whisper of a cry came again, pulling him forward like a thread. His heart began to beat faster, though he did not yet know why. He crossed the barren field, the soil shifting under his feet. The closer he came, the clearer it grew, the sound of a voice muffled by earth, choked and desperate. He stopped breathing for a moment, his mind reeling. Someone was buried. Daniel dropped to his knees, pressing his lantern into the ground. He dug with his bare hands, pulling at the dirt with frantic force. The soil was loose, freshly piled, and his fingers clawed through it quickly. His pulse thundered in his ears. He prayed he wasn't too late. At last, his hands touched something soft. A small hand, trembling, reached out from the soil. Without thinking, Daniel grabbed it gently, pulling away more earth until the child's face appeared, covered in dust, eyes wide and terrified. The little alien girl coughed weakly, her lips blue from the lack of air. Daniel's chest tightened as he lifted her out, brushing dirt from her skin. She was so light, as if her body had been starved, her small frame shaking in his arms. "You're safe now," Daniel whispered, though his voice trembled. He wasn't sure she understood his words, but he wanted her to feel them. The girl clung. To him, her weak fingers curling around his shirt as if letting go meant death. She tried to speak, but only broken sounds escaped her throat. Her large, glowing eyes, alien but full of pain, pleaded with him. Daniel stood slowly, holding her, close, scanning the empty night. Whoever had buried her might still be nearby. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. What kind of heart could do this to a child? The village huts stood silent in the distance, their windows dark. No one stirred. No one came to help. It was as if the world had decided the child did not matter, but Daniel could not walk away. The girl's breath was shallow, her chest still struggling against the air. He pulled off his old coat, wrapping it around her thin body to shield her from the cold. She relaxed just slightly, her trembling slowing, but her grip on him did not loosen. He adjusted his pack and lantern, tightening his hold on her. Every instinct told him danger was close. Whoever had done this would not forgive her rescue. Still, as he looked down at her fragile face, streaked with dirt and tears, he made a quiet promise to himself. "I won't leave you," he whispered. Theo? Girl's eyes flickered as if she had understood. For the first time that night, her lips curved faintly, an almost invisible spark of hope. Above them, the stars seemed to burn brighter, as if bearing witness to the fragile bond formed in the dark. The night was no longer silent. It carried. A promise carried a hidden cry that had been heard at last. And for Daniel, the lonely human traveler, this was only the beginning. Daniel's hands were still shaking as he clutched the small alien girl against his chest. Her body felt fragile, too fragile, like a bird whose wings had been broken by the wind. Each breath she took rattled softly, as though the air itself resisted entering her lungs. He pulled the coat tighter around her, whispering words he hoped would calm her, though he knew she probably did not understand his language. Her glowing eyes blinked weakly, their soft shimmer reflecting the dim light of his lantern. In that faint glow, Daniel felt both relief and dread. Relief because she was alive, dread because her condition was worse than he had expected. He could feel the bones beneath her skin, sharp against his arms, telling a story of hunger and neglect. He looked around, the night pressing down heavy. The village behind him remained silent, windows dark, no voices, no footsteps. Yet he could not shake the feeling that someone was watching. He remembered the pile of dirt, the cruel way it had been placed. Whoever had done this might return, and if they saw her alive, there would be fury. Daniel crouched low, adjusting the girl carefully in his arms. "Stay with me," he murmured, his voice steady despite his racing heart. She let out a faint whimper, and her tiny fingers dug into his shirt, refusing to let go. He needed to act fast. Daniel scanned the area and spotted a shallow ditch near the field's edge. It was not much, but it could shield them from sight. He hurried there, crouching inside, setting down the lantern with its light turned low. He placed the girl gently against a smooth rock, kneeling in front of her. The child's lips moved, trying to form words. What came out was only a broken whisper, faint and cracked. He leaned closer, straining to hear. Her language was strange, filled with soft, clicking tones and long vowels, but he caught the essence of it. Fear, pain, and one desperate plea. "Don't leave." Daniel's chest tightened. He nodded firmly. "I won't leave you." Her eyes glistened as if she believed him, or wanted to. He quickly reached into his pack, pulling out a small canteen of water and a piece of dried bread he had been saving for the night. He broke the bread into small pieces, wetting them slightly so they would be softer. He held one to her lips. At first she didn't react, too weak even to open her mouth. But when he pressed gently, she parted her lips, chewing slowly, her throat working to swallow. Daniel gave her a sip of water next, holding the canteen steady. She coughed, some of it spilling down her chin, but then she drank again, this time more carefully. He fed her another piece of bread, and her fingers twitched, as if wanting to hold it herself. For the first time, Daniel felt hope that she might survive this night. But hope was a fragile thing. A sound cracked in the distance, the snap of a twig under weight. Daniel froze, his body tensing like a bowstring. His eyes swept the darkness, scanning the line of huts in the distance. He saw nothing, but the sound had been real. Someone was moving. The girl heard it too. Her body stiffened, her eyes widening, in terror. She whimpered again, pulling herself against him as if she knew exactly who was coming. Daniel clenched his jaw. Whoever this was, they were dangerous. He blew out the lantern, plunging the ditch into near darkness. Only the faint glow from the girl's eyes remained, casting a ghostly shimmer across the dirt. He pressed her gently to the ground, whispering, "Quiet." The footsteps grew nearer, slow and heavy, circling. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. He shifted his body, placing himself between the girl and the sound. He had no weapon, no blade, no gun, only his fists and the desperate strength of a man who had made a promise. The footsteps paused. The night grew silent again, save for the faint rustle of wind across the field. After a long moment, the sound faded, moving back toward the village. Daniel waited, every muscle tense until the silence stretched long enough that he could breathe again. He looked down at the girl. Her face was pale, but her grip on his coat had not loosened. She trusted him, even in the dark. He exhaled slowly. "We can't stay here," he whispered. He lifted her again, tucking her close against his chest, and moved away from the ditch, keeping to the shadows at the edge of the field. His eyes scanned the horizon until he found what he was looking for, an abandoned shack, half collapsed, standing at the border of the forest. It was broken, yes, but it could serve as shelter until dawn. Each step felt heavy, but Daniel pressed on, carrying both the child and the weight of his choice. He knew this was not just an accident he had stumbled into. He had crossed into someone else's cruelty, and by saving her, he had invited their wrath. But as the little girl's faint voice whispered again, too soft for words, only a trembling sound of life, he tightened his grip. He would not let go, and deep inside, he knew something larger had begun. This was no simple rescue. This was a fight for her life, and perhaps, in ways he did not yet understand, for his own. The shack creaked under the cold wind, its roof half broken, its walls patched with rotting wood and forgotten metal sheets. Daniel had carried the alien girl here in silence, his steps careful, his mind burning with questions. He set her down, gently on a patch of dry ground inside, wrapping his coat tighter around her small frame. Her breathing had steadied, but her eyes still flickered with fear, as though she expected the darkness itself to rise and swallow her again. Daniel sat near her, his back against the wall, listening. Every sound outside made his muscles tense. The whisper of branches, the distant bark of some alien beast, even the crackle of shifting wood. He knew this was not over. Whoever had buried her would not stop so easily. The girl stirred, her lips moving faintly. Daniel leaned closer. At first her words were broken, the strange alien syllables stumbling out. But slowly, he began to understand. Her name was Elira. She spoke of her stepmother with a trembling voice, describing her cruelty with gestures and short phrases. She said, Mistake, Elira whispered, her voice raw, her glowing eyes full of pain. She touched the dirt, on her arms as if remembering the weight of it. Daniel's jaw tightened. A mistake? A child treated like this, discarded as if her life meant nothing. His fists clenched, anger rising inside him. But he forced his voice calm. You are not a mistake, he said, though he knew she might not understand every word. Still, she blinked slowly, and he thought maybe the meaning had reached her heart. But while they sat in the broken shack, shadows moved in the village. The stepmother had returned to the spot where she had buried the girl. When she found the soil disturbed, her face twisted with fury. She hissed curses into the night, her sharp eyes scanning the field. She knew at once. Someone had interfered. Someone had stolen what she had tried to erase. By morning, the whispers had spread. Villagers gathered in hushed groups, their eyes glancing toward the fields. The stepmother told them lies with a serpent's tongue, her voice filled with practiced sorrow. The child was cursed, she said. She brought ruin to my home. She is not my blood. The human took her, not to save her, but to keep her for himself. You must see it. He is a thief of life. The villagers listened, uncertain. Fear lived in their hearts, and fear was easy to feed. If the girl was cursed, perhaps it was better that she was gone. If the human had taken her, then perhaps he was dangerous too. Suspicion grew like weeds. Back in the shack, Daniel sensed the shift in the air. He stepped outside, scanning the horizon. Smoke rose from the village, but no voices carried toward him. It was a silence filled not with peace but with tension, as though the land itself waited for something to break. Elira tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide. Come, she whispered. Daniel knelt in front of her, placing his hands on her shoulders. I won't let her take you. His voice was steady, but inside he felt the weight of those words pressing hard. He was one man, unarmed, in a place that was not his own. The stepmother had power here, and he was a stranger. As the day stretched on, Daniel kept them hidden in the shack, giving Elira small pieces of bread and water when she could eat. She stayed close to him, her fragile body trembling whenever. The wind rattled the broken boards. He could see the scars of fear written on her, years of being unwanted, treated like less than a person. It made his anger burn hotter, but also his resolve. By evening, the first villager came. A tall alien man with heavy steps passed near the shack, pretending to gather wood, though his eyes searched the shadows. Daniel stayed quiet, pressing Elira against the wall, holding his breath until the man moved on. But more came after him. Voices, in the distance, footsteps circling. The hunt had begun. The stepmother walked among them, her face sharp, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She spread her lies like fire. The child belongs to me. She is mine to deal with. The human hides her, but he cannot protect her from what she is. Inside the shack, Elira buried her face against Daniel's chest, trembling. He stroked her hair gently, whispering, "You're safe here." But his words felt thin against the weight of the shadows pressing closer. He knew they couldn't stay here much longer. The stepmother's influence stretched wide, her lies poisoning the minds of those around her. If they found him, they would not see a rescuer. They would see a thief. Daniel rose, adjusting his pack and lifting Elira into his arms once more. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light, filled with fear but also trust. That trust cut deep into him, binding him tighter to his promise. He stepped into the night, slipping into the trees at the edge of the forest. Behind him, the village lights flickered, and the stepmother's voice carried faintly through the air. "He cannot hide forever," she hissed. Daniel's grip tightened. She was right. He could not hide forever. But he would fight. He would run. He would do whatever it took, because he had heard the hidden cry and he could not turn away now. And so, with every step into the forest, the shadow of the stepmother followed. The forest stretched before them like a maze of shadows, its trees tall and twisted, their branches clawing at the night sky. Daniel moved quickly but carefully, his boots crunching softly against the roots and fallen leaves. In his arms, Elira clung to him tightly, her glowing eyes watching the darkness as if monsters lurked behind every tree. He did not need her warning to know danger followed them. He could feel it in the air, the weight of pursuit. The stepmother's voice still rang in his memory, dripping with venom. He cannot hide forever. Daniel pressed on, every step a silent promise. He had no plan, no destination, only one thought burning in his chest: keep her safe. Elira's head rested against his shoulder, her breathing shallow but steady. Every so often she would whisper a broken word in her language: fear, hunger, cold. He answered softly in his own tongue, hoping his voice was enough to calm her. She did not understand all his words, but she understood the tone, and sometimes her trembling slowed. Hours passed, the forest thickening around them. The night was long, but dawn finally broke, pale light seeping through the branches. Daniel stopped near a stream, setting Elira down gently on a rock. She blinked at him, weary but awake. "You need water," he said softly. He filled his canteen in the stream, letting her sip slowly. She coughed at first but managed to drink, her small hands trembling as they clutched the container. Then she looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Find us," Elira said. Daniel's stomach tightened. Even in her weakness, the girl's fear was sharp, certain. The stepmother was coming. He scanned the forest, searching for any place they could hide. Ahead, the trees thickened into a ridge. Beyond it, he saw a faint opening, a cave mouth, half hidden by vines. It was risky, but better than being out in the open. Daniel lifted Elira again and pushed toward the ridge. His muscles ached, his pack heavy, but he did not slow. Each step felt like a race against time. Behind them, the forest began to stir with movement. Twigs snapped. Voices echoed faintly, carried by the wind. Daniel's heart pounded. The hunters were close. "Hold on," he whispered to Elira, his grip tightening. She buried her face against him, her tiny fingers clinging to his shirt. At last they reached the cave. Daniel ducked inside, lowering her carefully to the ground. The air was damp and cool, smelling of stone and earth. He set his lantern down, keeping the light dim. The cave was narrow but deep enough to hide them if they stayed quiet. Elira sat against the wall, her eyes wide. Daniel crouched beside her, his finger pressed to his lips. Quiet now. Outside, the footsteps grew louder. The stepmother's voice cut through the forest like a blade. "Come out, thief. You cannot hide her forever. She belongs to me." Daniel's blood boiled at the sound. He clenched his fist but forced himself to stay still. If he moved now, they would be caught. The footsteps drew closer, then paused near the ridge. He held his breath. Elira's hand reached for his, her small fingers trembling against his palm. He squeezed gently, trying to steady her fear. Moments passed like hours. Then the voices began to move away, fading into the distance. Daniel waited, every nerve taut, until he was certain they had gone. Only then did he let out a slow breath. Elira leaned against him, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. She whispered softly, "Safe? For now," Daniel murmured. He brushed the dirt from her cheek, seeing the faint spark of hope in her gaze. "But we'll need to keep moving. We can't stay here long." The child nodded weakly, trusting him completely. That trust pressed heavily against his heart. He had promised to protect her, but the danger was greater than he had imagined. Through the day, they stayed hidden in the cave. Daniel gave her what little food he had left, saving only enough for another night. He knew he would need to find more soon, but leaving her alone was impossible. As the sun set, the forest outside grew dark again. The hunters' voices returned, searching. Daniel could hear them calling, their words filled with venom and lies. "She is cursed. The human will bring ruin. Give her back to me." Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at Elira, who pressed herself, closer to him, shaking. He wrapped his arm around her and whispered, "They won't take you. Not while I live." The words were simple, but they lit something in her eyes. For the first time since he had found her, she gave him a faint smile, small and fragile but real. Daniel's chest ached at the sight. In that moment, he knew his path was set. He could no longer think of himself as a wanderer, passing through. He had a reason now, a purpose forged in the dark. He had heard her hidden cry and he had answered. And no matter what shadow chased them, he would not let her voice be silenced again. The forest no longer felt like a place of shelter. Its trees, tall and ancient, seemed to watch in silence as danger crept closer with every hour. Daniel sat against the rough stone wall of the cave, his lantern dimmed to a faint glow. Beside him, Elira slept fitfully, her small chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, her hand still clutching his sleeve even in her dreams. Daniel could not rest. His ears strained for every sound, the whistle of the wind, the crack of branches, the distant rustle of footsteps. He knew the stepmother would not stop. The woman's hatred was not the kind that cooled with time. It was fire that spread, consuming all around it. As the night stretched on, voices echoed faintly through the trees. Not just one, not just two. Many. The villagers were searching. The stepmother had turned her lies into a weapon, twisting fear into a leash that pulled the others with her. Daniel clenched his jaw. He was only one man in a world not his own, carrying a child that others wanted to erase. Yet he felt no doubt. He could not give her back. At dawn, Elira stirred, her glowing eyes fluttering open. She looked at him with confusion, then fear, as though waking reminded her of the nightmare she had been pulled from. Daniel brushed her hair gently from her face. "It's all right," he whispered. "I'm here." She nodded weakly, her lips forming a small, trembling word. "Hungry?" Daniel searched his pack. Only a few crumbs of bread remained, not nearly enough. He gave them to her anyway, watching as she ate slowly, her hands shaking from weakness. His heart tightened. If they didn't find food soon, her fragile body would fail her. But food meant leaving the cave. Leaving meant being seen. The decision was heavy, but it had to be made. Daniel crouched beside Elira, speaking softly. I need to find something for you to eat. I'll be quick, but you must stay here very quiet until I come back. Do you understand? Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. She grabbed his arm, shaking her head. No, don't leave. Daniel placed his hand over hers. I'll come back, I promise. After a long moment, she let go, though tears shimmered in her eyes. He tucked his coat tighter around her small frame and left the lantern dim beside her. Then he stepped into the forest, every sense sharp, every muscle ready. The woods were alive with whispers. Birds scattered overhead. Small creatures darted through the underbrush, and somewhere far off, the low voices of villagers echoed. Daniel kept low, moving like a shadow between the trees. He found a bush heavy with strange purple berries and tested them carefully. They tasted bitter, but not poisonous. He filled a pouch with them, then caught sight of a rabbit-like creature near the stream. His stomach twisted. He had no weapon, no way to catch it. He cursed under his breath. Footsteps cracked nearby. Daniel froze, crouching low behind a fallen tree. Through the branches, he saw them, 3 villagers armed with sticks and crude blades scanning the forest floor. The stepmother's sharp voice carried behind them. Find them, the child is mine, the human will pay for stealing her. Daniel's pulse thundered. He stayed still, his breath shallow, until they passed. Then, as silently as he had come, he slipped back toward the cave. When he returned, Elira's eyes lit up, relief breaking across her face. She nearly cried as he placed the berries in her hands. She ate slowly, carefully, while Daniel sat beside her, exhaustion pressing down but not breaking him. For a short while, they had peace. But as the day stretched on, that peace shattered. The hunters grew bolder. Their voices came closer. Their shadows flickered against the trees. Daniel heard the crack of branches outside the cave, saw the glow of torches moving in the distance. The search was tightening, a net pulling shut. Elira pressed against him, her small body trembling. Close, she whispered. Daniel's hand tightened around hers. He could hear the stepmother's voice again, nearer now, dripping with venom. You cannot hide her. She belongs to me. She is cursed, and you are a fool for protecting her. Daniel's chest burned with fury. He pulled Elira closer, whispering, You're not cursed. You're not hers. You're safe with me. But inside, he knew the truth. Safety was slipping away. The hunt was growing fierce. That night, they fled again. Daniel carried Elira through the trees, moving swiftly but silently, guided only by moonlight. Behind them, torches flickered like hungry eyes. The stepmother's shadow stretched across the forest, closer than ever. Each step forward felt like a battle, but Daniel refused to stop. He had heard the hidden cry, and now he knew. Protecting her would not just take courage, it would take everything he had, and the hunt was far from over. The night was restless. Daniel's lungs burned as he pushed through the forest, carrying Elira close against his chest. Each breath came heavy, but he did not slow. Behind him, the glow of torches flickered, moving like fireflies among the trees. The hunters were gaining ground. The stepmother's cruel voice carried through the wind, sharp as broken glass. Human, you cannot keep her. She is mine. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had heard those words too many times, and every time they made his resolve stronger. He glanced down at Elira. Her glowing eyes were wide with fear, her lips trembling, but her arms clung tighter around his neck, as though her tiny strength could anchor him. They reached a clearing where the forest thinned and the moonlight poured across the ground. Daniel's boots sank into the soft soil. He stopped, his chest heaving, his mind racing. He could run no further. The forest ahead was too open, and the voices behind were too close. If he kept fleeing, he would collapse, and then they would take her. No, he would not let that happen. He set Elira gently on the ground, brushing her tangled hair back from her face. "Stay behind me," he whispered. His voice was steady, though inside his blood roared like thunder. The girl shook her head violently, tears glistening. "No. She hurt you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel knelt, taking her small hand in his. "I'll be fine. You trust me, don't you?" Her lips trembled, but she nodded. The first torch broke into the clearing, followed by figures moving out of the trees. The stepmother strode forward, her tall frame wrapped in shadows, her sharp eyes burning with rage. Behind her, villagers fanned out, their faces uncertain but their weapons raised. The stepmother's voice cut the silence like a blade. "Give her to me, human. She is mine to deal with. You think you can take what belongs to me? You are nothing here. Nothing." Daniel straightened, planting himself firmly between Elira and the approaching crowd. His chest rose and fell, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "She is not yours. She's a child, and you tried to bury her alive." Gasps rippled through some of the villagers, though the stepmother's glare did not falter. She spat on the ground. "Lies! She is cursed. She was sent to ruin us. She brought sickness, misfortune, hunger. I only did what had to be done." Daniel's fists clenched, his whole body shaking with the urge to strike her, but he stood firm. "No child deserves that. Not in any world." The stepmother sneered. "You're a fool. You don't understand our ways. Step aside before you suffer the same fate." The villagers shifted, uneasy, their eyes darting between the human and the stepmother. Doubt flickered in their expressions. Some lowered their torches slightly. The truth was cutting through her lies, but her power was not gone. Elira, trembling, peeked out from behind Daniel. Her voice, small and broken, pierced the air. "Not curse," she whispered. "I live." The clearing grew silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The villagers stared at her, at the fragile child who had been left to die in the dirt. Her glowing eyes shimmered with tears, her voice trembling but true. No curse," she said again, stronger this time. The stepmother's face twisted, with fury. She lunged forward, raising her hand as if to strike. "Silence!" she shrieked, but Daniel moved before she could touch the girl. He stepped into her path, his voice booming with a strength he hadn't known he had. "You will not touch her again." The stepmother froze, her hand trembling in the air, meeting his eyes. There was something in Daniel's gaze she had not expected, unyielding fire, a promise of defiance stronger than any blade. The villagers whispered among themselves, their doubt growing into shame. They looked at the stepmother, then at the child, and the truth was too heavy to ignore. One man lowered his torch completely. Another dropped his stick. "She is just a child," one muttered. "She's alive. She is no curse," another said quietly. The stepmother turned, rage flashing across her face. "You fools, do you not see? She will destroy us all." But her voice no longer carried the same weight. The fear she had planted was crumbling under the sight of the small, trembling girl and the human who stood unbroken before her. Daniel did not move, his body like a shield between Elira and the stepmother. "You've lost," he said quietly, but his words cut like thunder. For a long moment the stepmother stood frozen, her fury burning bright but powerless. Then she hissed like a snake and stepped back, retreating into the shadows. Daniel looked down at Elira, her hand clutching his tightly. Her eyes were still wet with tears, but for the first time there was something else there. Hope. He knelt beside her, brushing her hair gently. "It's over," he whispered. She shook her head, softly, her voice fragile. "No, not over. Come again." Daniel's heart sank at the truth in her words. The stepmother's shadow had been pushed back tonight, but it had not vanished. She would return, darker and more dangerous. Still, he smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. "Then we'll be ready. And you won't face her alone." Elira's lips curved into the smallest, faintest smile, fragile as dawn light. For the first time, she believed it. The confrontation had ended, but a larger battle was only beginning. The clearing was still, the echoes of the confrontation lingering in the night air. The villagers slowly drifted back toward their homes, some ashamed, some uncertain, but most shaken by what they had witnessed. Only Daniel and Elira remained in the moonlight, the stepmother's shadow fading into the forest, but her threat still lingering like a poison. Daniel exhaled slowly, lowering himself onto the ground beside the girl. His arms ached, his legs trembled from exhaustion, yet his mind stayed sharp. He knew it was not over. The stepmother had retreated, yes, but she would return. Hatred like hers did not burn out, it only grew darker when denied. Elira leaned against him, her small body trembling from both cold and fear, her glowing eyes fixed on him as if searching for something she wasn't sure existed. Come again, she whispered, her voice a fragile thread in the silence. Daniel nodded. I know. He placed a hand on her shoulder, firm but gentle. But listen to me, Elira. You're not going back. Not now, not ever. She blinked at him, surprise flickering across her face. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. For the first time in years, someone had said she belonged. Someone had chosen her. As dawn began to break, painting the horizon with faint colors, Daniel made his choice. He could not leave her in this place, not where lies, twisted truth, and cruelty was called law. She deserved more than survival. She deserved a life. By midday, the villagers gathered again, their faces weary, their trust fractured. Daniel walked among them with Elira's hand in his, her small steps steady despite the fear clinging to her. Murmurs spread as they approached the center of the village. The stepmother was there, her face pale with fury, her eyes sharp as blades. You dare return here? She spat. Daniel stopped, his voice clear and steady. Not to return her, to show the truth. He turned to the villagers, his voice carrying across the square. You were told she was cursed, that she brought ruin. But look at her. Look at what has been done to her. A child, buried alive, treated as if her life has no worth. Is that the way of your people? Is that justice? The villagers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their gazes, unable to meet the child's glowing eyes. Others murmured, doubt filling their voices. The stepmother snarled, raising her hand to silence them. Do not listen to him. He is an outsider. He knows nothing of our laws. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself directly between Elira and the stepmother once more. His voice cut through the crowd like iron. Then your laws are broken. If they allow this, then they are not laws of life, but of cruelty. No law can erase the worth of a child's voice. The crowd stilled. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, from the back, an older villager stepped forward. His voice was tired, but strong. He speaks true, the man said. We have feared shadows for too long. She is no curse. She is alive. Others followed. One by one, torches were lowered, weapons dropped. The stepmother's face twisted as her hold over them slipped away. You will regret this, she hissed, pointing at Daniel, her voice trembling with rage. You cannot save her from me. She is mine, and I will take her back if it costs my life. Daniel met her gaze, unflinching. Then it will cost you everything, because she is no longer yours. She is free. And if anyone tries to harm her again, they'll have to go through me. Elira clutched his hand tighter, her glowing eyes shimmering with tears. Her voice, small but steady, rose above the silence. I stay with him. The villagers gasped. It was the first time many of them had heard her speak so clearly, her voice trembling, but full of courage. The stepmother's fury broke into a scream, but no one followed her this time. Alone, powerless, she backed away into the shadows, her threats fading into the forest where she belonged. The village turned to the human and the child. Some bowed their heads in shame, others in respect, but none raised a hand against them. Daniel lifted Elira into his arms, her tiny smile pressing against his chest as she whispered, Safe. He looked at her, his heart heavy yet filled with something new, a sense of purpose, of belonging. For years he had wandered aimlessly, searching for meaning in a world not his own. Tonight he had found it in the smallest, weakest voice, a cry that no one else had listened to. And he had chosen. He would not just protect her, he would give her a life worth living. As he walked out of the village, the rising sun bathed the horizon in gold, and Alira rested her head on his shoulder. For the first time she felt the warmth of safety, and for the first time, Daniel felt the weight of a promise worth keeping. The hidden cry had been heard. The human had answered. And together they stepped into a future neither had ever dreamed was possible.